Welcome. This is Uncommon Sense, a podcast presented by the Heshi CPA Knowledge Center. The center is an initiative of the CPA Education Foundation, the charitable arm of the Chartered Professional Accountant profession in Alberta. Our episodes feature conversations with Alberta CPAs sharing their insights on a wide range of timely topics. Alberta CPAs work in every part of the economy and volunteer their time and expertise in virtually every community in Alberta. With each episode, we bring you voices and perspectives that reflect the diverse knowledge and contributions that CPAs bring to our province. Welcome to another episode of Uncommon Sense. Today, we're going to be talking about the principles of leadership. No matter where someone is in their career, they will likely at some point be called upon to lead, whether that's leading a project, a team, or an entire organization. With that in mind, our guest today, Jason Labonte, is a CPA who is also a certified executive coach with experience in coaching leaders. Jason will be discussing the principles of leadership and how emerging leaders can develop their leadership and executive skills. With over 20 years of leadership and financial expertise, Jason has built his career transforming organizations, solving complex challenges, and helping teams succeed. Jason currently serves as a director on the board of directors for CPA Alberta. Along with being a CPA, CMA, Jason blends financial savvy with a passion for leadership development and strategic planning. He's all about empowering teams, aligning leadership, and creating processes that drive results. He is also a 6-time Ironman competitor. All of that makes him the perfect guest to lead us through a discussion about leadership and career growth. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks, Jessica. Happy to be here.
So we open every episode with a piece of uncommon sense that our guest wants to share. So Jason, do you have a life hack to pass on to our guests, or perhaps a piece of advice that you once received that really resonated with you?
Yeah, when I was younger, I had a mentor who, mentioned something to me about the importance of being comfortable with uncertainty. And the only thing that really is you can count on is uncertainty. And that's just the way the world is. It's very uncertain. And that's grown over the years with me. And I it's turned into, being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So about getting comfortable in being uncomfortable. And that's something that served me sort of in all facets of my life and continues to evolve, actually. So
yeah. And of course, there have been uncertain times always, but it certainly feels in the last 6 years or so that it's been especially so.
No kidding. I mean, I remember when I was back in school and we were talking about emerging trends and globalization and technology, and, we hear a lot of the same words, but the rate of change that we're seeing now is, we hear a lot about unprecedented change, and it's pretty rapid. So, learning to be comfortable while being uncomfortable is a good skill to have.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's great advice. So the focus of our episode is going to be on your background and experience as an executive coach and a leadership mentor. But before we get to that, can you provide maybe just a brief overview of your career path and why you chose the CPA designation as a career? Sure.
I grew up in Ottawa, in Ontario, and my mom was an accountant, actually. She became an accountant. She became a CA in 1969. There was 325 new accountants that year in Ontario, and 3 of them were women.
Wow.
And my mom was one of them. So mom was very successful, and she had a very diverse career as well, and sort of in and out of education. And so, I never really, I thought accounting was boring. I didn't think I was interested in it. I kind of wanted to be in business, and I got out of high school and went to university, and didn't really have a focus. And, after a couple of years of just working, I found myself out in Alberta, and I went to golf school I went to MacEwan. I took the golf management program and I finished that, and then wasn't sure I wanted to stay in the golf business. And then I was involved in the music scene here in Edmonton, and I ended up touring Canada for a couple of years with some bands. And then I decided, I'm ready to go back to school, and thought I wanted to be a teacher. And I did a year of university over again, and got accepted to the Faculty of Education at the U of A. But then decided that's not what I wanted to do. And I thought, that accounting stuff that I kind of dabbled in here and there was enlightening. So I went back and I was inspired to become a CMA. And that's what I did. And then I've just had a career of, public sector and private industry, entrepreneurship, consulting. I taught in the strategic leadership program for CMA Alberta for more than 10 years. I used to teach night courses at MacEwan. So I just, getting my designation changed my life, and it's allowed me to work in all kinds of different industries and help all different kinds of organizations. So it's been a blast.
That's really interesting. So what I'm hearing is you've done a lot. You've tried a lot. What was it about golf and music, and then, potentially teaching, and then finally deciding on accounting? Did it seem like maybe a more logical choice, or did you like it?
Yeah, I took accounting in high school, and it was really, really easy. I didn't struggle with it. I understood the concepts right away. And most accountants would tell you when they were introduced to accounting, it's not like they had to study for a while. It was like, nope, I get it. Yeah. And then, when I took the golf program, which was, it's a management studies diploma, and there was a managerial accounting course. And it wasn't difficult, and it kind of made a lot of sense. The chair of the program was a designated accountant. And he talked about, having a designation and what it allowed him to do. And he said something along the lines of, when things are good and the economy's booming, organizations need accountants to tell them how much money they're making. And when things aren't going well, organizations and groups need to know how much money they're not making. So there's always going to be a role for an accountant. And the way he explained it, I thought, wow, you can get this designation and then just go work anywhere. And it's provided me this backdrop. It wasn't that I wanted to become like a number cruncher. The financial piece is important, understanding, where an organization's been, and, tax and audit and everything else. What got me was that looking forward, where can we go, and the strategy, all based on sort of good financial foundation. So that stuff is what the bells started going off with me, going, oh, this makes a lot of sense. Like this idea of being strategic and seeing the big picture, and then, turning around and getting down into the weeds, and then back and forth, and understanding, how to help, how organizations work, and how to scale them up, and how to make them go forward. So, and I'm very much a people person. So it was all about, that's where the teaching piece was. I thought that's what I wanted to have, that constant interaction. And it's really what I found out midway in my career was that, well, this is leadership, because leadership is learning.
Mm-hmm. That leads perfectly into our next question about you, being a people person and also a CPA, but you're also a certified executive coach. So what is that, and how does a person earn that certification?
Yeah, I went to, back in 2019, I went to Royal Roads, and I took a graduate certificate in executive coaching. It was a 1-year course, pretty intensive. An executive coach supports an executive or a senior leader in their leadership development. And the way that a coach does that for a leader is, there's a thought-provoking kind of creative process that you'd follow that inspires the coachee, inspires the leader to maximize their leadership potential, their career potential, and personal potential. So really it's different than being a consultant. It's not a consultant. It's not necessarily an advisor. It's not like a therapist or a counselor. it's a coach. And so it helps leaders solve their own problems. So, as an executive coach working with a client, I would, instead of holding somebody accountable, I'm holding them capable, right? So it's using a process to, inspire, challenge, support, empower an individual so that they can move forward with more clarity than they would have had otherwise.
Mm-hmm. And what really got you interested in being an executive coach?
Well, I've always been a fan of just leadership in general, and sort of, I guess I found myself on a bit of a quest. I'd read all kinds of leadership books. I was fortunate to be a moderator in CMA's strategic leadership program, where we didn't really teach people. We more sort of brought that potential out. So I was in environments where there was a lot of learning, and that's what I said earlier. Like leadership is learning, and I crossed paths with some executive coaches and had some meetings. We had an executive coach in one organization that I worked with. We did some strategic planning, and then this executive coach kind of worked one-on-one, with our senior leadership team. And the way that he interacted and just really quickly was able to unlock some pieces personally for me. And then I, being curious, I built a relationship with him and asked him lots of questions about being an executive coach and thought, maybe one day, that's something that I would aspire to doing. And I found myself, in a place where I had capacity to take that on and further my education. And the process of actually taking the coaching program was in and of itself transformational. Like it, and that's what this coaching is all about. It's really about people, right? And being there to help people reach their potential. So I've always had a bit of an attraction to that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So aside from them reaching their full potential, what would you say, how would executives and maybe other professionals benefit specifically from working with a coach?
Yeah, there's lots of benefits. And I do believe that everybody could benefit from having some coaching. And especially this sort of non-directional coaching. But this sort of executive coaching is really only for people that want it. Like there's a difference. Like somebody has to be open to, being coached. And because what it does is it really unlocks potential. And when an executive then or a senior leader is, maybe grappling with something, and maybe it's career progression, or maybe it's trying to get the most out of their team, or maybe they feel like they've been spinning their tires. Maybe they feel like they're really busy and they're having trouble prioritizing. And I mean, leadership a lot of times is lonely. It's a lonely endeavor. It's challenging. There's pressure, and a lot of times executives and leaders don't have anywhere to turn. And there's a lot on their shoulders. So, working with an executive coach to bring clarity to maybe what's important, to find what's blocking an individual from making a decision or from seeing the path forward, it's unlocking that piece. And then what that leads to is sort of strategic growth for the individual and the organization, right? So it then becomes exponential. So you help a leader, and then they're not better at, the technical aspects of their job. They've already got all the potential. They're already in the leadership role. What it's helping them do is then get the most out of their team. And then it's exponential, and it helps that organization kind of move forward. It's really like a performance catalyst is what executive coaching does. And I mean, the examples that I've witnessed in other people and in clients and in myself, it's quite something.
Mm-hmm. And you kind of touched on this a little bit, but I think the one of the main principles of coaching is they already have the answers. You're just really helping them to find that clarity, right? You're not telling them what to do. You're just helping them kind of find their way.
100%. Yeah. It's being an executive coach, there is a spectrum for like a coaching relationship. And like we're a consultant or an advisor. Like somebody could come to me and say, hey, Jason, you got 20 plus years working in these and working with teams. And like, I want you to help us build a team. Or, we want to do some strategic planning and we'd like your insight, right? So that I'd be kind of like an advisor or a consultant. Mm-hmm. Being a coach, it's like, okay, so Jessica, like if you were the executive, Jessica, I'd say, okay, like Jessica, let's, what's on your plate today? What would you like to talk about? And you would tell me what you're kind of grappling with or what the issue is. And then I would ask you questions and we would dig into that and I'd listen and I'd hold space. Mm-hmm. And I'm holding you capable going, well, Jessica's a leader. Jessica is an executive. And Jessica has that role and she has all that potential. And my job is to be the mirror, be the sounding board, try to see maybe what you can't see and ask questions. And then you're going to help you to find your way to what it is that you need to do next. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's non-directional as opposed to directional. It's not like a sports coach, telling the team what to do. Mm-hmm. It's more of but it's not a counselor or a therapist, mm-hmm. right? It's a leadership coach.
Mm-hmm. Have you found that coaching is just as important to a veteran long-term or long-time executive as it is to people that are new to these types of roles?
Oh, 100%. I think I said it earlier, something around, I think coaching could benefit just about anybody, but it's only for people that want that. Right. And so, somebody who's got some aspirations, somebody who, wants to challenge themselves, somebody who has a lot of ambition, there's shadow sides to that. And, people that realize that, they're not in it alone. They don't have to be alone. They don't have to go on that path by themselves. They can benefit from it. I've seen, I used the word catalyst earlier. I've seen individuals that are earlier in their career and having an executive coach as a catalyst for them personally and for their organization. So, in leadership, part of leadership is title, but most of it is, you can lead wherever you are. Right? You can lead in your community. You can lead in your personal life. You can lead, in your organization. If you're a part of a team, you've got a role. Everybody's on a journey. And leadership is learning. And you can get on and off that bus anytime you want.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever come across someone in a coachy relationship who's not very coachable?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
like they don't want it.
Well, they say they want it.
Right.
They say they want it. That's common. There is a vetting process. There does have to be a fit, and somebody's got to be willing to go to those places to try to unlock whatever it is that's stopping them from getting to where it is that they want to be. Mm-hmm. And they might not be ready for that, and that's okay, right? So, as coaches, we try to. My style of coaching isn't necessarily the best fit for everybody, right? I worked closely for more than 2 years with an executive coach personally, and before I chose Suzanne, I interviewed 3 other coaches, right? And had conversations, and I had to find the right fit.
It kind of reminds me of, just because we're going through this right now with my son, he's 8, and I'm sure every parent says this, but of course my husband's coaching him in his baseball and his hockey, and it's a very different coaching relationship with my son and then him with his other coaches, right? All parents are like, well, he doesn't want to hear it from me,
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, sometimes maybe it's who the coach is, it's the fit, it's their leadership style, their coaching style, and how the person who's being coached views them as well.
Well, and there's a relationship there. And sometimes relationships have beginning, middle, and an end, and sometimes they're ongoing, and the duration, could be for a long time, or it could be short. I've seen coaching relationships that start specifically when somebody's in a leadership role, and they're looking for some assistance in terms of working with their team and growing within the organization. And over the course of 18 months to 2 years, they're achieving things that they didn't think were possible before, and the relationship then continues. And suddenly, this individual has something else in their life that they've got some challenges with, and they call up their coach and say, hey, you know what, or send an email and saying, hey, I'm wondering if you've got 40 minutes or half an hour here later this week, and there's something I want to talk to you about. And yeah, no problem. And it then becomes because leadership isn't just in a role in a job in an organization. Like it's part of who you are as a person, and so those relationships can really blossom that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So obviously the concept and practice of leadership is a central part of being a successful executive, no matter what kind of organization the person works in. But from your perspective, what are the essential characteristics of good leadership in today's business environment?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think the characteristics of a good leader start with self-awareness, understanding your own potential, understanding your own capabilities, understanding the capabilities of your team, perhaps, and then it's emotional intelligence. Can you stay calm? Can you stay grounded? Can you lead? Can you be out front with your team? And then it's your ability to learn. I said it earlier. I think leadership is learning. The world is uncertain. Business is uncertain. Organizations and the environments that they live in are uncertain, and things are always changing. And organizations that need to adapt, constantly adapt. Generations change. The workforce change. Change is the only thing that's constant. We talked about that right at the beginning of this podcast. I'd say self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and sort of a leader's learning agility, their ability to learn. Things like, having vision and having good people skills and being technically proficient, like all of those things that got somebody to a leadership role are going to be there. But I really think the differentiators are, being self-aware, being emotionally intelligent, and being able to learn, and, over time.
And do you think that the qualities that define an exceptional leader have maybe changed over the last decade or two? Or are those, in a sense, timeless?
I think they're timeless, 100%. I think they're timeless. And for an individual, like our species has been around for a long time. and the world around us has changed, but we really haven't changed all that much. And so, for an individual to lead, through different times, this increased self-awareness, would lead to improved leadership skills and improved performance and team cohesion and, the ability of people to come together and make great things happen. I think those things are timeless. And I think what really attracts me to leadership are those characteristics of being self-aware, of being, emotionally intelligent, which is, it's more, maybe that's more of a buzzword, but, learning sort of the constant change that's there and working with people. That's like, we'll always need that, regardless of, what's happening with technology and, the rate of change is so quick and, the world economic situation, and all of that it's always been in flux, and we need leaders. And I don't think we need leaders more than ever. I think we just always need leaders. And some people are called to it, and some people aspire to it. Others find themselves in those roles and maybe need some assistance. So, yeah.
Yeah, that ties into one of my next questions, which is, are people born leaders or are leaders made?
I think it's a bit of both. And it's, I really believe that leadership is a journey. And it's a bit of a vocation for individuals that, continually find themselves in those positions, that they're comfortable in that. And they're comfortable in that because they to be a leader and to be successful, you have to be self-aware, and you're constantly evaluating where you're at. Like, a person's they're on a journey, they're on a personal journey as a leader, and they're on that path. And I think that's what's exciting to me. That's why I fell in love with the whole concept of leadership. It's been a part of who I am, and it doesn't have an end date to it. It's constantly evolving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think that the principles of leadership that you speak about apply to someone who would lead just a small team, or maybe even serve as a leader of projects rather than people, or large teams, or just kind of like applies to all?
No, I don't know. I don't think it applies to everybody. I think leadership, in my perspective, my definition of it would be very different than management. Like managing and tasks and delegating and supervising, and that's important. Like I'm not diminishing those skills or the importance of those roles within organizations. I mean, organizations have frontline workers, and depending on the size and scale, and that those roles are important. But as those teams sort of, maybe depending on the size and the complexity, and suddenly leadership starts to bleed into that a little bit. Right. And anytime that you're dealing with people, there's a and you're leading, and you're making decisions that, are impacting, 1, 2, 3 other individuals, a team, an organization. There's suddenly it's more than management, right? So it's a bit of both. And but I think those qualities of being self-aware, of being, being able to be calm, to be able to be comfortable, in uncomfortable situations, and being able to learn. I think those are key. The scope. It's almost like the scope and the magnitude of having those maybe changes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So throughout our conversation, we've really been talking about leadership in the sense of, in a professional sense, in the workplace. But can the principles of good leadership be applied outside of the office, and how so?
Oh, I think so. I think they can be very different. But I think somebody who is really aspiring, who is a leader, and they're going to end up leading sort of wherever they're at. They might not, I know at home, my wife she's in charge. Like, she's the leader. She's the leader of the Labonte household. But we support each other, right? And I can lead where I'm at, and I can still be responsible and do my part. And so I think, leadership, again, it's one of the principles of it that it's attractive to me, is that, there isn't really no role, or there's no place where it's not required, right? Like an individual that said that you can lead where you're at, that you don't need to have a title, you don't need to be at work, you don't need to, right? You can lead wherever you're at, just by being a good citizen, being a good neighbor, being useful in your community, and doing your part. I think those are all leadership characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to me, the qualities that you mentioned, like emotional intelligence and being self-aware, those are just as important to have, in a personal relationship than as they are in a working relationship, right? I think they would make you a better parent, friend, spouse, whatever it may be. I think those are very important.
100%.
So before we wrap up, I really want to touch on the topic of your Ironman experiences. I understand that you're a very successful Ironman athlete. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. I was into running, and I ran 5K races, 10K, half marathons, and then marathons, and I did that for a number of years, and then was attracted to doing something a little bit more challenging, and I'd heard about triathlon and Ironman triathlon, and I competed and did my first one in 2016 in Whistler. And I had quite an experience where my bike broke on the way back up to Whistler, and I had to remove a derailleur and ride another 30-some kilometers up the mountain in only one gear. And I was able to finish that, and then I wanted redemption right away. And so I signed up the next day for a year later and came back and did it again. And I did Mont Tremblant in 2019. And after doing 3 of those races, I was like, well, I'm not getting any faster, and these aren't getting any easier. But I'm watching other people do. Like, there's something to this, and so I signed up with a coach, and I started competing and racing in these races, and they've been getting faster. So the whole exercise has turned into a bit of a lifestyle. And it's been just another kind of a catalyst in my life that I think there's a strong correlation between the executive coaching and the leadership and the stuff that I do when I'm not doing that stuff. Mm-hmm. It's been very, very rewarding, and it keeps me out of trouble.
Yeah, it's interesting that I was going to ask you if there's an element of like self-coaching or if you have a coach, but there's probably, you obviously have a coach, but there's probably a little bit of self-coaching that goes into it too. Like, you have to want to.
Yeah, it's been an evolution for sure. It's been, I'm fortunate to have somebody in my corner that we've built a relationship, and he provides workouts and feedback and guidance, and it's there's a much like any coaching relationship. There's some trust, right? There's some vulnerability in there, and this stuff's not easy, and but it's very rewarding, and when I see the impacts of what it does, and how it impacts the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And have your experiences in Ironman competitions taught you anything that you can apply to your life as a CPA and executive coach? And then maybe conversely, are there lessons from your life as a CPA and coach that you have been able to apply to your life as an athlete?
Yeah, I think the motto or the sort of the tagline for Ironman is anything is possible. And so with those, training, it's a journey. When somebody endeavors to do one of these races, the race is actually the celebration. The race is, okay, I got to the start line healthy, and I'm ready to do this event. But it's the, sometimes year or more of preparation to get there. That's the real challenge. So there's that journey. And then understanding that things are going to get difficult, and a lot can go wrong when you're trying to do 3 sports at once, mm-hmm. and raise kids and have a family and have a job, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and so this too shall pass becomes and some days you don't have it, and you just have to get through it, and it's taught me a lot about consistency. I used to train with, with values, I'd have these values. I'd think, okay, this is about, discipline and commitment and sacrifice. And, those were the words that I would sort of repeat to myself early on when I was doing these. And those have evolved into gratitude, joy, and just consistency, just show up. And that's what's been really, those lessons have impacted my professional life. They've impacted my personal life. They've impacted everything. It's sort of changed. Again, getting my accounting designation changed the way I saw the world. Going through the strategic leadership program and teaching in that changed my perspective even some more. And doing these, becoming an executive coach. And then, I layer on this stuff with endurance racing, and it's quite a perspective that, it's quite a window that I've been able to see. But when things get hard, that they will pass, and they do get better. And and we're actually capable of a lot more than we think.
Mm-hmm. So an Ironman it's a triathlon but longer, is that right or no?
Yeah, it's a long distance triathlon. So it's a 4-kilometer swim, 180-kilometer bike, and a marathon.
Oh my! And so, what is the training like at a high level? Like, what does the training look like for that?
So
you have to do it all, right? You have to practice running and cycling and swimming. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's the nutrition. Like you then have to
course.
fuel those workouts, and then the rest and recovery, and you got to make sure you're getting enough sleep. And but it is training in 3 different sports. And like I said, it does become a bit of a lifestyle. There's lots of my wife is also into triathlon, so there's lots of empty water bottles, lots of laundry, lots of workout clothes,
meal prep. I'm sure.
Lots of that, and a lot of we plan our vacations in and around going to races, and it's quite a community of people. It's a feeling of accomplishment, and always trying to, I try to train with curiosity, and some weeks you have it and some weeks you don't, right? So, I think your question was more along the lines of kind of what does that take? Like how, like time commitment wise, maybe is something that you're...
Yeah, or like is it, roughly like swimming 2 times a week, running 2 times a week, biking, like what?
Yeah, it's it varies. You probably want to try to touch each of the disciplines a few times a week, throw in some strength training in there. Mm-hmm. I'm not young, so I'm going to the chiropractor, I'm going to physio, I'm doing that kind of stuff as well, to kind of get through it. It's depending on the athlete, depending on what race is coming up and what part of the training I might be in. I might be in the pool, 3 times a week, probably on my bike 3 or 4 times a week, probably running 3 or 4 times a week. So there's some days where you're doing multiple workouts or combining them. Weekends revolve around a big bike and then a big run at some point. So yeah.
So where are you at right now with your training cycle? Are you training for something right now?
Yeah, so I have a longer term goal. I move up to a different age group next year, and my races have been getting quicker, and so my goal is to qualify for the World Championships in 2027. So I've got 2 half Ironmans scheduled for this summer, and then I'm going to do Ironman Florida in November, and then I'll look for a qualification race next year, hopefully, and get to the big race.
Oh, good for you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jason, for being here today and for sharing your thoughts on leadership and related topics. No matter where a person is in their career, what you've talked about today is very relevant and incredibly informative. So it's been a pleasure speaking with you today, and thanks again for being so thoughtful and open with us.
Thanks, Jessica. It was a pleasure.
The Uncommon Sense podcast is presented by the CPA Education Foundation and funded by the Heshi CPA Knowledge Center. The Knowledge Center was created through a generous donation by the late Brian Heshey. Brian was a distinguished Albertan, business leader, CPA, educator, and community builder. His generosity and commitment to education underpinned his good works across Alberta throughout his lifetime. The opinions expressed on Uncommon Sense do not necessarily reflect the views of the CPA Education Foundation. We would like to acknowledge that CPA Education Foundation offices are situated on the traditional Treaty 6 and Treaty 7 territories and Métis Nation homeland. The Foundation acknowledges that we reside on traditional and ancestral territories of many Indigenous, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Their histories and culture influence our community to this day. The Foundation is committed to helping build a province where Indigenous people and their voices and experiences are heard, valued, respected, and celebrated. Technical and recording services for this podcast provided by Wolf Willow Studios in Edmonton. If you enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to like, subscribe, and tell your friends about us. If you have any comments about the podcast, write to us at cpaef@cpaalberta.ca. To learn more about the CPA Education Foundation and the Heshey CPA Knowledge Center, visit cpaalberta.ca/foundation. You can also follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search for the CPA Education Foundation.